Welcome to Top Self. My name is Shannon Bryant, and I have with me today Dr. Christie Kederian. And I am so excited to have you here. You've got an amazing book that's coming out, 10 Dates to Your Soulmate. I love it. And you are a renowned relationship therapist and former eHarmony matchmaker, now known as the date doctor, and the most fabulous hair. Welcome to Top Self.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure. So I thought it was so interesting because I know that you really help people create lives that they love and find love they deserve. And I think that last part is so big and probably what a lot of us struggle with.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. I see it every single day, whether you're single or in a relationship. It's really understanding your worth and attracting and creating a relationship that mirrors that.
Something that I thought was interesting, I didn't know that the matchmakers at eHarmony were all like, I think they're all therapists, right? Or were all yeah.
Yeah. So we used to work in a personalized matchmaking service that eHarmony unfortunately doesn't offer anymore. But it was basically that therapists would come alongside people who wanted to sign up for this special program where we would see who they're compatible with through the algorithm, but then we would actually personally interview those people and connect them with people we thought would be a good fit. So it was kind of connecting people. Okay, you're compatible with them, but it was having that personal touch of, okay, am I spotting red flags as a therapist for my client? Am I thinking that there would be alignment in more of those ways that are not on paper? So it was a really great opportunity to have someone, you'd like people to introduce you, but it's like having an expert who has that knowledge introduce you can really create that healthy relationship that a lot of our clients were looking for.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm sure Dr. K. I'm sure people were like, "Oh, I wish you could go with me on
Yeah.
can you go do the first, like, 3 days? Just let
Yeah,
me
sure.
know if it's worth it." Right?
Totally. Yeah, and that's what we do with our matchmaking clients now is we essentially go on that first date for them, like, with them in mind. We're asking some of those deeper questions, and then we're making the introduction. So I think it's almost a modern take on that old school, like, your grandmother set you up with someone that they knew the family, knew them down the street. It's like someone that cares about you, that can see maybe some of your blind spots or help ask some of the questions that you might feel afraid to ask early on.
Mhm. Because that's such a good question, right? Of we always think about it where it's, "Is this person right for me?" Or what is this person's red flags? But it's kinda like, "Well, what am I bringing to the
Right.
relationship?"
Exactly. Yeah, and it's hard sometimes for us to be honest with ourselves, but if you have loving people in your life that can let you know, "Hey, like, this is an area that you might wanna grow in order to attract the type of person that you want," then that really helps you turn the mirror inward and recognize, "Okay, I wanna be this type of person, so I am, with this type of person in my relationship." And it's one of those things I went through it personally in my own dating journey as well, even though I'm an expert in this field. It's like, a doctor can't do surgery on themselves. So every single person has their blind spots.
Right.
So we have to be humble enough to say, maybe there's a pattern I'm not seeing with the type of person I'm attracting or what I'm doing in this relationship dynamic that's causing problems, and then make those shifts.
Okay. So is that maybe some specific questions that we should be asking? Because I know everyone's like, "Is this my soulmate or is this the person that I'm supposed to be with?" Are those the types of questions that we should ask?
Yeah, that's really where we start with all our clients, and what I talk about in the book is really understanding yourself, flaws and strengths that you'll bring, your patterns, your attachment, your past, what you recognized in your parents' relationship, like in your upbringing. And all of that really has so much more to do with if someone's compatible with you, more so than do they like the same hobbies I do. Like, a lot of people think that makes a difference, but really it's a lot of what's going on subconsciously that makes us attracted to someone or not attracted to someone. And once you're aware of that, the whole game for your dating and relationships change.
Mhm. And I think people go through that a lot, right? My husband's family's great, my family's great, but I know that people are like, "Oh, wait till you meet my family,"
Yeah.
or, "Oh," that sometimes people are really nervous about
Mm,
that,
totally.
kind of their background, where they come from, how their family is. So, how does that play into our relationships? And is that something if we're in a relationship with somebody or we're dating somebody, should we be concerned about their background?
Yeah. So one of the things that I recommend in the book is that one of the questions that you ask before you're in a committed relationship with someone, and if you're already in one, it's okay. It's never too late to ask about family dynamics. So this is one of the most important things to be aware of. No family's perfect. Every family is going to have their imperfections, their flaws, the skeletons in the closet people don't want to talk about. But if you have the awareness and open communication with your partner, then you kinda know, "Okay, is this the right baggage for me, particularly to be taking on with someone's family of origin, like their immediate family?" The thing that I say often about blending 2 people with 2 different backgrounds, no matter how similar you are culturally or faith-wise, that
Mm,
you're still different, and it's like when you're traveling into a different country, you have to learn the nuances and customs and maybe be
mm.
aware of the language. Let's say you're gonna be there for a while, you move to a new country, or you're gonna be there for like 6 months. You have to kinda understand that they're a different, country. They're different, they operate differently, and it's not that your country is wrong or doing things differently, it's not that theirs is wrong, it's just different. So, in order to really adapt and blend into that new culture, you have to understand a lot of things and learn them, and so having that curious mind and just being open to learning can make a really huge difference instead of having a more of a judgmental mind of, "Oh, you guys do things this way? Well, that's the wrong way," or "That's so different,"
Right.
because sometimes couples I work with often get really surprised, and we don't really know the inside of anyone's family besides our own. So we think the way our family growing up did things was just normal because that's all we know. And so when you start blending those 2 and you're like, "Oh my goodness, they do things so differently," it's hard not to get into that judgmental, like, who's better or not. But if you just view it as differently and we're just learning each other, then that really helps too.
Yeah, because I can see that going even to one person is comfortable holding hands in public, one is not. Maybe they never saw their parents really give affection, and so they're like, "Yeah, they totally love each other, and
Mhm,
that's normal," and
mhm.
the other person thinks, "Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, they're not showing it.
Yeah,
That
totally.
must mean there's a problem," right?
Yeah, totally. That happened with my husband and myself, yeah. In our relationship, so yeah, it's really interesting the assumptions that you make too.
So you're saying this should be an actual intentional conversation
Yes.
that we choose to have instead of, because I think what we do a lot is just let it play out, like,
Yeah.
just ride the wave and then go, "Oh, they do things that way because." You're saying, "No, have an intentional conversation about it."
Yes, 100%. Obviously, I think it depends on someone's culture and their connection to their family. In my cultural background, I'm Armenian, and it's a very family-oriented, culture. What I've seen is that because the families are so connected to each other, so much of how people's families did things bleed over into their own adult life,
Mhm.
their values. But even if you're with someone or you are someone that maybe you're estranged from your family, you're not very close, you see each other a few times a year, whatever it is, how you grew up is the number one significant factor to how you create your new relationship. So whether you hated it, you loved it, you're connected or not, it's part of you. So understanding that can really help to color in the lines between what you might not be understanding about your partner or some miscommunication or disconnection. Some of that really intentional conversation can bring that to light and help you just really form that intimacy.
Can you maybe talk through how we have that conversation? I'm just thinking the person listening to this podcast, they most likely have come from a dysfunctional background. And so I'm almost thinking of the way of, and I remember this in my own relationship because struggling with jealousy and insecurity in my relationship, my dad being an alcoholic, it always felt I was pretty ashamed to talk about it. I was embarrassed to talk about it, and then trying to figure out, like, the right time and the right way to talk about that. So can you help us? How do we have that conversation, especially if
Yeah.
it's the first time?
Definitely. And I think it's a really important conversation to think about for yourself, how you want to share, how you feel comfortable sharing your own background, as well as learning about that person, the person you're dating or that you're in a relationship with. So I always say it's a progressive process. So you might share, let's say you went through a really difficult divorce and you're dating again, and you don't want to spend the whole first date kind of rehashing, oh, and then this happened, and that happened, because that will really kill the connection on the spot. So I say is like, you can share and be authentic without telling the whole story. A lot of people feel like if they don't tell the whole story, they're not being honest, but that's not true. You're
Mm.
just sharing whatever you feel comfortable with at the moment. So a line that I share with clients often is creating kind of an elevator pitch for the situation you're in. So, yeah, I went through a divorce. It was really challenging in a lot of ways, but it taught me that this and this and this is what I'm looking for. I'm happy to share more if we continue in the process of getting to know each other. So, something as simple as that can really help people feel like, hey, the way that they're talking about this makes it seem like they've really processed and worked through it in a place that they're in a healthy place to be in a new relationship. Now, when people go through, my ex did this and they're a terrible person, or same with family, your parent situation. Oh, my dad did this, my mom did this. Like, when we don't have that own healing, it will definitely come out in the way that you talk about something and the way that the person that you're with talks about something. So I would say kind of create a way to talk about it that doesn't necessarily go into the whole story, so you feel like you have a vulnerability hangover. And then as you continue getting to know someone, so if you're already in a serious relationship, really asking more about what their upbringing was like. So this might come out just in more organic ways. Let's say you're watching a movie
Mm.
and the character in that had some severe issues with substance abuse, and sharing like, oh wow, like that really brought up some things for me from what I've processed, like in my own past, and using some of those opportunities to create connection, or even asking them, like, oh, yeah, this made me think about family dynamics and what was yours like growing up, or whatever. So, understanding like how we can weave conversations in can be really helpful. Also, sometimes meeting friends or family, or having those connection points can also help, because it will give you context into what sort of questions you wanna ask somebody about as well.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so helpful because I know that's something that people it's always, "Oh, how much do I share and when do I share it and what should I say?" So I was thinking about something when you were talking. What if maybe that person really is interested, like you make a comment, like you said, there's something on and you start to
Yep.
share and you give just a little bit of background and then they are asking questions. Is there a point where you think, and maybe this is just old, dating strategies or tricks, but is there a point where you don't wanna keep answering those questions? Like, can you say too much too early even if they're asking?
Yeah, yeah, huh? Basically, you don't wanna answer too much early on in the dating process, even if they're asking, because they might genuinely be curious and it might be coming
Mhm.
from a good place. So what you don't realize is that is more of a block towards connection, unfortunately, rather than a conduit towards more connection. So you wanna make sure, especially in the early stages of dating, that you're focusing on that, like, connection between the 2 of you, not only on your past or only on your future. You really wanna pay attention to talking about things in the present. So I think you can definitely redirect. If they keep asking and not understanding your boundary, that's where saying something like, "I'm so happy to share more, but, maybe as we get to know each other, I can open up a little bit more about it." How someone reacts to your boundary tells you a lot about them. So if they keep, like,
That
prying,
was yeah.
asking 20 questions and all this stuff, and you just feel uncomfortable and they're not sensing that, could be that there's some misalignment there. But generally, someone will respect those boundaries, and you can always revisit those. What we recommend in our 10 dates to soulmate strategy is that anything that kind of was lingering earlier on before you're in an exclusive relationship, you can revisit that. So, hey, I know we were talking about like your relationship with your ex a few weeks ago. I'm curious about X, Y, and Z, whatever was still lingering, because now you've built enough that you really like them and you wanna get to know them. If we're talking about your whole relationship history on the second date, we don't even know if we like spending the same amount of time in a room with this person. Why? There's no need to go there yet. But at that point, you wanna understand more about who they are if you're ready to make that next step into a relationship.
Mm. Yes, okay, so thank you so much for that. I also know there are some people that might be like, "I just wanna say everything." We just kinda go into it sometimes with that, like, "I just wanna put everything on the table because if they can't handle that or they can't" that
Mhm.
sort of mentality
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
that, "Oh, I just want them to know everything," and then okay.
Yeah,
you
and
can handle it or not.
the thing I warn against with that too is that sometimes it creates a false sense of intimacy because you're sharing these really deep and vulnerable things, and then they're listening to you, and it just creates this, like, almost therapy relationship, so to speak, and while it might feel good that someone's listening to you and hearing your story, we really wanna know about if there's really true and deep, chemistry and connection and intimacy that is deeper than just that superficial, like, "Oh, what happened?" Kind of that why we read the
Mhm.
tabloids and things like that. So you wanna pay attention to that and keep that in mind because it might feel good to do that and connect over these stories that were really vulnerable for you, but at the same time, we wanna make sure that this is the right person to share that with.
We were talking about response, and you were talking about specifically response to boundaries, but I know that especially when you're feeling jealous, you're feeling insecure, you've got this dysfunctional background, it gets really hard. Sometimes people really struggle with how much of this do I share, and what are they gonna think about me when I share it?
Yeah.
So is there anything that we should be looking for in terms of how they actually respond to it? Or, like,
Mhm.
what do we want out of it by telling them? I
Yeah.
guess is also potentially a question.
Yeah. So I always recommend that once you share something vulnerable about yourself, whether it's something that you struggle with around jealousy or other dysfunctional patterns, you always want to recognize if that person can demonstrate empathy. That's probably one of the number one red flags that people that are prone to narcissism or are just not able to be in a healthy relationship. They won't have the ability to really show sincere empathy of, wow, I didn't have that experience, but hearing that and imagining myself walking in your shoes, that must be so difficult. So that really like felt experience, you feel like they're really listening, understanding that, and they demonstrate empathy over time is a really important thing to pay attention to. And the other thing that I'll say is that I think oftentimes people can minimize someone else's experience or pain or struggle if they don't experience the same thing. So you want to pay attention to someone who minimizes that. Oh, that's not a big deal. Or, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. The truth is, you do feel that way. And while you may be working on it with a therapist, or it might be more of an internal thing, it might have nothing to do with your partner, the person you're dating, the way that they're able to come alongside you and say, you know what, this is big for you. So I'm going to really hold that space for it as well and support you however I can. Sometimes that's in what they do, and sometimes they really can't do anything. That's something you have to
Right.
work on your own. That's going to be a really important thing to develop for a healthy relationship as you go through your own process with it.
Mhm. Yeah, gosh, it's such a hard conversation to have. I know people just get really nervous about talking about their past like that.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, and I think, like, sometimes, especially with jealousy or triggers from past relationships, sometimes it's hard to really understand, "Okay, is this my own trigger from a past relationship, or is this really about what this person is doing?" And so what I really recommend working on and focusing on is, okay, separating kind of the facts from the feelings, like, "Okay, this person did this thing, and it feels really familiar to this past betrayal or something that my ex did," or whatever, versus, oh, they're actually doing the same thing that my ex did or whatever that is. And I think how someone responds when you communicate that you're triggered. So let's say, they do something like unintentionally that triggers you and you say, hey, like, I'm feeling this way. This is what happened. If they're able to really get to a place where, okay, how can I help support you? What do you need from me to work through this together? That's where really the beautiful, like, corrective emotional experience happens for you of, oh, wow, like, even though I have this wound and this trigger and this person didn't intentionally touch it, it's that still happened and I'm able to repair and rebuild that. And that can be a really great place of connection and trusting that, okay, this person can really be there for me even when I'm feeling this way.
Mhm. We tend to maybe, overestimate in terms of a lot of different when we think about relationships, it's like how many people cheat, what's the divorce rate, all of that, which kind of adds to the anxiety of being in a relationship or starting a relationship
Mhm.
or trying to figure out, do I wanna continue the relationship that I'm in? Any stats that you can, like, let me set the record straight because you guys are thinking incorrectly or, "Yeah, you're right, that is a thing."
Yeah, recent trends actually show that the divorce rate is actually lowering, which I think in some ways is positive. It does mirror that people aren't getting married, like I said, too often, and they're getting married later than ever. But I do think that one positive from the dating app boom is that a lot of people were able to meet others based on similar values and more deeper things rather than just, oh, this is just this person I met at this random
Right.
place. They live down the street. So if we're able to really bond and choose people based on some of those values, that is a really great protective factor towards like divorce or just, not getting married. So I think what I always recommend and encourage clients to do is not to think about the statistics, but rather to really focus on the values and core qualities and the process of getting to know somebody because it can feel very daunting, but the truth is if you're able to work on yourself and you're able to find someone who you're willing to grow with, that's really the recipe for a healthy relationship. So I wouldn't really worry in that sense of thinking about the statistics. I would just focus on, okay, one person at a time, and you're really only looking for one person.
And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing if people are waiting until
Yeah.
later to get married, especially if the divorce rate's going down. It just maybe shows, hey, we're being more serious and thoughtful about it, and we're dating longer or dating more to make sure that person is a match for us.
Yeah, definitely. I think that a lot of people and because of just culture and society, there's not necessarily the need, especially for women, they don't necessarily feel that need in a more financial, career-oriented sense to get married as maybe 20, 30 years ago. So that does give more independence and less, okay, I just have to marry somebody because that's what we do. And hopefully, I work with a lot of single women that feel like society still stigmatizes that. But I think that ultimately, you never want to be in a marriage that you're just in because you felt like that was your only option. You really want to be focusing on the deeper qualities and discovering, like, what's really important to you for a long-lasting relationship and finding someone who aligns with that.
So, along the same lines of that, I wanna talk about chemistry because
Mhm.
that's such a we always hear that, like, I either had chemistry with them or I didn't,
Mhm.
or we're in a relationship and we're like, "Ugh, the chemistry's gone. We used to have it." So, how important is it? Is it something that we should be paying attention to? Do we not really know what chemistry is looks like?
Yeah, I think a lot of people confuse chemistry for that initial spark in like on the first date or you're like initially drawn to someone. And actually chemistry has a lot more to do with the connection with someone over a period of time. And I think there's different types of chemistry. So a lot of times people think, okay, like this is physical chemistry and that's what I'm looking for. But really, there's physical chemistry, there's emotional chemistry, intellectual chemistry. There's different ways that we really connect and blend with people. And so I think that is really what's key and fundamental to focus on is okay, there's ways that I'm going to connect with this person and chemistry is really important, but this is only one piece of the puzzle. There's also a lot of other things that it takes to make a relationship work. I think sometimes people over prioritize this like feeling of, oh, I just love being around this person. They just get me and that sort of thing. That often has a lot more to do with our past and our upbringing and what feels familiar to us instead of like, oh, actually, this person is a really good fit for me. And I think that piece is what's really important. A lot of times, women that I work with, especially, believe that they know right away if they have chemistry with someone, but the research actually says it usually takes around 5 to 7 dates for women to understand if they have chemistry with someone. And men, it usually takes a little bit less, like around 1 to 2 dates. Um, but you have the ingredients to reconnect, have that spark if you're already in a relationship and rebuild that chemistry. And it has a lot to do with the emotional side of really connecting and being vulnerable and aligning with somebody as well.
Yeah, because we could have maybe that physical part go down, but if the emotional connection is going up and that emotional chemistry, it's okay.
Yeah,
Maybe there's a balance there instead
totally.
of just we're not quite as hot and heavy as we were in the very beginning. Yeah.
Totally, yeah, people really underestimate the power of just presence and listening and being seen by someone has to build that chemistry because I think that people often think you either have it or you don't, and they don't realize that you can actually build that chemistry or rebuild it with somebody.
Great. Okay, I was looking at our backgrounds. It's like the war of the bookshelves here. Yours looks so much better than mine. I had a ton of books up, and mine looked crazy and chaotic when I had a bunch, so I took some down. Yours looks perfect
I
and
love the
great.
simplicity there. It's hard.
It's so hard. But I wanna talk about your book for a second. Why did you feel compelled to write this book?
Well, yeah, so this book actually comes out of the strategy that I use to help clients, and I walk them through this strategy, and it's worked with hundreds of clients and helping them find and like, keep a healthy relationship. And so it just was a natural progression of that, just kind of like putting my work into a tangible form that people can read and apply, even if they're not necessarily working with me in one of our programs. And so I really came up with this concept when I worked with clients or clients came to us that just felt like lost in the dating world. Like they felt they just should meet somebody and it should just evolve and it just happens. And I think that's a really common misconception because of, pop culture and these romantic comedies and you just meet the right person and then everything works itself out. And the reality is that's not the case. You can meet a great person, but you have to really do the hard work to really understand, okay, is this my person? Are they compatible with me? Is this the right person for me? And how do I really learn that? How do I know that
Mm.
someone is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? What do I need to learn about this person? And so the 10 Dates to Soulmate roadmap really just breaks that down. This is how you get to know someone's character, if they're your person or not. And feeling like you
Mhm.
have a strategy and a roadmap to follow can just relieve so much of that pressure of like, should I just know? Or like, am I missing red
Right.
flags? Is this the right person or not? And we just walk you through learning about someone's character. And even for people in relationships, just really understanding, okay, how can I ask some of these questions to connect with someone that I might not have ever known about them? And that could really
Mm.
help heal some of the things or incompatibilities that you have in your existing relationship too.
Oh, that's so good to have kind of that roadmap because especially people who are already insecure, they're jealous, they get in relationships and I think social media also plays a pretty big role in this. Like almost now it's, oh, is that a red flag? Is that a
Right.
red flag? Like everything is a red
Yeah.
flag.
Yes.
It's talked about so
Mhm.
much. So I think that's great to have that roadmap. I'm probably putting you on the spot here a little bit at two things I want to ask,
Okay.
but if you could pick like for the single person who is out there dating and for somebody who is in a relationship, like, from your book, what would be one thing you would want each of those groups to know?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for the single person, what I really want them to understand is that we want to humanize people. I think with social media, with dating apps, it's really easy to just see a few pictures of someone and just be like, oh, their hair's weird, or they only
Right.
put this corny joke on their dating profile. So, left. And it's made kind of people feel expendable almost. It's okay if they're not
Mhm.
your person, but it's made the way that we think about people. I think social media contributes to this as well, as just not real people behind a screen wanting to find love. And I think the thing that I talk about, especially in the first few chapters, is really understanding for yourself as a single person what truly matters in the dating process and what myths that you have turned into your own beliefs that have been blocking you from finding love. Sometimes it's from a place of self-protection, especially if you struggle with things like insecurity or jealousy. You might find the easiest flaw about somebody is just a simple thing that makes you disqualify them completely, when actually that might just be some part of them being a human,
Yeah.
that we have those flaws ourselves. And I just really encourage a lot of women are struggling with this hyper independence, this, okay, I don't need someone, but they do really desire that. But because they don't want to get hurt, they're just willing to kinda see any potential flaw as a
Right.
complete red flag, and understanding, like, how do I slow down that process and instead just think, "Okay, is there enough here that I'm interested in going on one date?" Instead of, "Do I wanna marry this person?" And slowing down the process can really help you understand more about yourself too, which will eventually help you be a much better partner in the long term with whoever you do date or marry. But I think a lot of women kind of mistake having this like intuition or I just know. And that might
Right.
really be like your past trauma just trying to protect you, but it's also blocking you from finding love.
Yeah. Oh, I've never thought about that, and just, all I need to decide, like, I just am going on a date,
Mhm.
not, "Oh, am I gonna like this
Yeah.
person or
Mhm.
not?"
Yeah.
I'm just going on a date.
Yes, exactly, and we think if we see someone's profile, we should decide, "Oh, am I gonna marry this person?" That's way too far down the road, and I think because we often have this microwave mentality in today's society, like, we just wanna know, we don't wanna waste our time, like, on to the next. We can often feel that slows down the process of connecting with somebody, and I would say for married people, I think that the thing that I really love and I think is can be a secret recipe to understanding more about your partner is really understanding their background, their upbringing, more about their parents' relationship that
Mm,
we found has such a big implication into how they show up in your relationship. And I think
right.
people don't really understand enough about how someone's past it has influenced who they are today. And as a therapist, I'm obviously prone to wanting to understand more about people's past, but I think people just don't ask enough questions or they accept situations at face value that maybe your spouse went through and we think why can't this person change or why are they like this or whatever
Mm,
that is, but once we really dig a little bit deeper we it can bring a new perspective and understanding. Not that it excuses if there's bad behavior
right.
going on in relationships, but the understanding can really help you also understand how do I support my spouse in maybe kind of processing this, whatever this is. So I think really bringing the family back into the relationships in that understanding piece is really valuable. I always say, and I think this is really true of relationships. They talk about this when it comes to parenting, but I think it's true of relationships as well. Like we don't really have a village mentality anymore. And it's very like, okay, it's us two, and everybody else is not part of the system really, but they're invisibly there we or not. And that often really hurts relationships because there's so much pressure on your partner and on yourself to just be everything for your partner, like your business partner, your emotional person. You want to like all the same hobbies and go to the same movies and things like that. And I think that's too much of a burden for a relationship to bear and it creates a lot of struggles. And so building a village around your relationship is a concept I talk about that I think can really help a lot of struggling relationships just prosper and just feel so much more healthy.
Yeah. And I know you talk about attachment styles
Mhm.
and how those affect your relationship. We know they're huge in
Mm.
relationships. And I think it's so important what you're saying because we know insecure attachment styles usually get in relationships with other insecure attachments. So you've got both of you have stuff there.
Mhm.
And so that's certainly going to play in the relationship.
Yeah, definitely. And the good news about people that struggle with insecure attachment is that if you are with someone, let's say you're more anxiously attached and they're also more anxiously attached, the research actually shows that you have a good chance of working together towards secure attachment. And likewise, if you're both avoidant, you can work together. The dynamic that you don't want to create is that anxious avoidant cycle. And the thing
Right.
that I think is important to pay attention to is where you are in the spectrum and how this plays into your relationship in different phases and in different ways. So I think people say, okay, I'm anxiously attached, but they don't recognize where it's showing up and then what they can really do about it. And I do talk about that in the book of like, what's the tangible action I need to take if I'm anxious and this keeps happening or.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, such good information. One of my things is to get people who are feeling insecure and feeling jealous in their relationships to talk about it, to feel like if when they're ready and talk about it, not, but mostly not be so ashamed
Mhm.
that they're feeling that way. So I love to ask my guests if they have ever felt jealous or insecure in their relationships. And if so, do you feel comfortable sharing an instance that might have happened?
Yeah, sure. I can't really think of in my relationship, but I've definitely struggled with insecurity and jealousy I think one thing that has really helped me, I think it's more so in career in some ways,
Mm,
but in general in life sometimes, especially with social media, just thinking like, "Oh, this person's so far ahead of me." I struggled a lot with that
mhm.
when I was single and just feeling like, "Oh, another person got engaged or another person was having a baby," and just really feeling like maybe those things aren't going to happen for me, but one thing I really learned that helped me from a, like, therapist perspective is that I worked with people from all walks of life, but I worked with a lot of people that you and I would look at and be like, "Oh my goodness, this person has everything," they have
Mhm.
everything in their life, they have the fame, they have the money, whatever it is, and working with those people, realizing that there's so many things behind the curtain that we just don't know about, and obviously I would learn that as a therapist or the matchmaker, and once I've got more into that work, my relationship with jealousy completely shifted because anyone I see now that even if I have a twinge of like, "Oh, I'd love that for myself," and that's really how I reframe jealousy is like, it's inspirations, like, ugly twin sisters, "Oh, I'd love that thing," or "That seems so nice," and I don't have that, and so I feel that's where the jealousy comes in, but when I really see people's whole picture, which most of us don't see, I realized like, "Oh, maybe I'd love this part of something that they have, but I really don't want that other."
Yeah, right.
The celebrities or those people, it's like understanding that it's a full picture, and there's an analogy in my faith background as a Christian, there's an analogy that you have your cross, you're carrying your struggle, and if we all threw our struggle in the middle and got to pick somebody else's, you'd be going home with your same one. So kind of this idea of actually whatever I'm struggling through for whatever reason, this is supposed to be the thing that I don't have or that I'm lacking. And because someone is better in that area doesn't mean that I would want the thing that they're struggling with or lacking. So I think that's really changed the game for me in a lot of ways because I've been able to see behind the curtain of people's experiences and realize we all have things that we're going through and maybe we wish our thing wasn't our thing or our and thing that we struggled with or insecurity wasn't, but at the end of the day, it really is the thing that we're supposed to be working through maybe to help other people as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that about the cross because that's why I said we would never, as much as you can be jealous of someone else or be envious, you would never trade places with them.
Yeah.
Like, I've never found anyone that would say, "Yes, I would trade place." Like, I
Mhm.
would be them.
Yes.
Take whatever, all of their stuff, no
Mhm.
matter what it is,
Yeah.
I would be them.
Yeah.
No, we don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a reason for that. So I think that's really helped me personally and helped a lot of my clients, but I feel like it was something I struggled with a lot when I was single, not necessarily with one person, but just, "Oh, why did this person how come this person was loved or found their
Mhm.
person and not me? What am I lacking?" But it ended up being and for so many people, it's just not the right person or timing. And so
Right.
it wasn't really about you necessarily. Maybe on the surface it was, they rejected you for some reason, but at the end of the day, it was for, like, the best purpose.
Yeah. Dr. K, thank you so much for being here, and I am excited for your book, 10 Dates to Your Soulmate. We
Yeah.
will link it in the show notes. Go out, get the book. So good. Thank you for being on Top Shelf.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.